Hello, welcome back. My name is Steve Ellzey. I'm the CEO for Your Sanctuary Productions. We now have someone from the Sanctuary in the studio, Chad King, who is a research scientist. Chad, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Steve. Nice to be here.
And I said research scientist. You work for the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and you are one of their research scientists. And it's not like they have an entire building full, all right? There's not a lot of you over there.
No, there's not a whole lot. We do have a research team. There's about 4.5 of us or so.
Okay.
But we've all been there, very low turnover. We love our job. I've been there 16 years, and I'm the young one on the team. I'm the one that has been there the least. So I think it says something to our commitment and the job that we're doing and kind of the environment we work in.
Yes, well, I've always found everyone over there very, very passionate, obviously, about the ocean. And what a great environment to be able to work in. Today, let's talk about the Davidson Seamount expedition that you took recently. Tell the folks a little bit about where Davidson Seamount is, and we'll go from there.
So Davidson Seamount is an extinct volcano, but it's underwater. Now, it last erupted. No one has to worry about anything happening here. It last erupted about 9.8 million years ago or so. It's 70 miles southwest of Monterey here, about 80 miles off the coast of Cambria. So it's a little bit offshore. It's kind of out there. But what's really special about this place is that it's about as tall as the Sierra Nevada. It's about 8,000 feet tall. But the summit is still 4,000 feet below the ocean surface. So you can imagine it's fairly deep. No light is down there. But we think it's an important place, not only because on the surface of the mountain, by the way, it's 26 miles by 8 miles wide. Okay, so it's a fairly large mountain. It could fit in the entire Monterey Bay, kind of from Santa Cruz to Monterey, to give you kind of perspective on how long it is. But down below, it harbors a lot of deep sea, long-lived corals and sponges. And so it's really important for kind of the oasis of life it provides, because a lot of the surrounding seafloor isn't like that. And then secondly, it actually provides an area for deep water currents that deflect off of the seamount itself, and that pushes a bunch of the cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface, which then makes that available for the entire food chain. And so often we see a lot more life over the seamount itself.
Sure. Okay. And which is one reason why you go out there and study, and there's so much to study. Were there objectives of this for this particular expedition?
Yeah, so this last expedition we went out there was in July, and it was about 10 days. And it was on the NOAA ship Belle M. Shamata. It's a fisheries services vessel. And now, we don't really have much of a research budget here at the Sanctuary. However, we do have access to these very large, wonderful NOAA ships that are state-of-the-art, outfitted with all the latest technology in marine research. And so we apply for ship time every year, and we get it every couple or 3 years. And so this gives us the ability to go out there and actually study a lot of the things going on out there. So this particular mission, man, we had so much going on. During the day, we had trained professional observers looking for marine mammals and seabirds and counting them, so we know where they are. And this kind of tells us where the hot spots of food are. Because there's more we've been finding. This is only, the third or fourth time we visited the seamount to study the surface. So as you can understand, we're still just beginning to paint a picture of what it's like out there. But then we had other amazing tools to use sonar or echo sounder to image the prey that's available, mainly krill for the marine mammals and seabirds. But we also did a lot of tows to see the plankton in there, the fishes. We also did a lot of human health surveys. We tested or we trawled for microplastics, which is a big issue that I'm sure you've heard about, as well as persistent organic pollutants. And those are things like DDT, PCBs, flame retardants, anything that basically doesn't degrade naturally in the environment. And we want to see the connection of how far offshore these pollutants are going in relationship to how concentrated they are near shore, kind of where they're coming into the Sanctuary.
Thank you, Chad, for a great explanation. And I love the way that you take those difficult scientific concepts and just lay them out so a chucklehead like me can understand them. I appreciate that.
Trying.
And now, you say tow. That means talk a little bit about towing to collect data.
Yeah, we don't dip our toe in the water, although it's a little cold out there. No, we have these big nets, basically, kind of different sizes. And it's a different tool for any, for different applications. So one of them was a very large trawl or net called a tucker trawl, and we would put that, hang it off the side of the ship and actually kind of dip it about 400, 500 meters below the surface, so more than 1,000 feet.
Wow.
And then we let it sit there for about 10 to 15 minutes. And basically anything that kind of comes in the net gets concentrated into a little cod end. This is what we
Okay.
call it, a little end on the net. And so we can take that up, and now it's filled with all the stuff that's gone through there. We also have smaller nets that go to shallower depths just to target different things in the water. And so those are the two main nets that we used on this trip.
And then as far as the water columns that you were studying, was it a specific? Was it surface, midwater? What area?
Yeah, so most of it was the surface, but like I said, the nets, one went to about 400 or 500 meters, one went to about 100 meters. We also used another tool called a CTD, and that stands for conductivity, temperature, and depth. And so basically, this is just a big thing that we put down in the water, and it can go to 2,000 meters. It can go, more than a couple miles deep. We went to about 500 meters in the water column. So this is looking at all the temperature, salinity, how much chlorophyll there is, and a few other parameters in the water column. So we drop that every so often along these lines that we kind of mow the lawn, is what we call it, over the seamount. And so it was a very regimented scientific approach. But kind of when you put dots together that start to form a picture, one of those dot pictures, that's kind of what we're trying to do in terms of scientific terms. If we have enough dots with enough data on those dots, a picture emerges of what the oceanography is like out there.
In terms of wildlife on the surface or around that area, did you see any concentrations that you can tell us about?
Yeah, we did see a lot of fin whales, and that's the second largest whale in the world, right behind the blue whale. And so tons of that, which was fantastic. We also saw tons of seabirds, cassins, auklets, and a few other species. But we did notice a few patterns, and this is preliminary, but we did notice a few patterns that were closer to the seamount. More of the whales seemed to be on the northwestern side, and the birds seem to be on the southeastern side. We don't have an explanation for that yet. It could be random. But the more that we go out there and the more often we sample, the more of a picture we're going to be able to paint.
I'm almost afraid to ask you this, but do you have any data on the microplastics study? Or
not anything concrete, other than a couple of the samples that we did tow. I did physically see pieces of plastic in the sample, which is amazing. We're way offshore, and plastics are out there. But I think a lot of people have heard about the plastic garbage patch in the middle of the Pacific. That's even more remote, but that's where a lot of the stuff that we're putting in the oceans is getting concentrated, unfortunately. And so we want to understand what is that kind of concentration in our own sanctuary.
Yeah, and things like plastic do not break down.
Yeah.
They stay there and inhabit the habitat. So in terms of chemicals, did you find anything in the inorganics that you were talking about, the pesky ones?
So that was sent off to a company that does the testing for us, and so that's going to be several months until those results are known.
That's data.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned something about going back in October, and that's. Gosh, that's next month.
Yeah, it's funny in this world of science. Sometimes it rains where it pours, right? We haven't had access to these wonderful offshore research opportunities for a while, and now suddenly we have back-to-back cruises. So we do this October. In fact, in just 3 weeks, we're going to be heading out to the Davidson again. But instead of studying the surface and the water column, we're actually sending 2 robots, remotely operated vehicles, down to the seamount. Now, we have been there a few times with Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, but we have not been out there in more than 10 years to see what's down there. This opportunity is going to be with the Ocean Exploration Trust, which is run by Dr. Bob Ballard. And he's the man who discovered the Titanic back in the 80s. And so this is a wonderful opportunity. OET is working with sanctuaries and doing a bunch of cruises over a 3-year period. And so Monterey Bay Sanctuary has this particular opportunity in the fall. And I am very excited. I'm the lead scientist on this cruise. And so I'm in the middle of designing a bunch of this work, but we're really, really excited to not only revisit the seamount, but there's this big rocky area to the southeast that's never been seen by human eyes. And so we're going to be exploring that first and see what we get.
So you know that it's there because you have pictures of it, but we
have pictures of the bottom, sonar, the shape of the seafloor.
Sonar pictures, right?
But we don't know what's there. So that's the whole point of this, is it's exploration.
And this is with the Ballard Group, and is it with the Nautilus?
It is. It's on the exploration vessel Nautilus. That's correct.
That is so wonderful. So this time, Noah Shimada, in October, the Nautilus, and all going on in one of the most highly researched areas of ocean in the world.
Yeah, well, what's amazing about it is the seamount, the Davidson Seamount is one of the largest seamounts on the Pacific West Coast. It's also one of the most researched seamounts in the world, but overall, it's been visited maybe 7 or 8 times. So it gives you an idea of we don't know much more about the seamount. In fact, we might know less about the seamount than we do about the moon. So, I mean, that's the problem with deep sea research. But we're here trying to do our best.
And you keep doing that, Chad. What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning, gets you going about the ocean?
Yeah, when I was a child, I wanted to be either a paleontologist, a doctor, or marine biologist.
Oh.
And one of the things that really drew me to marine science was it was more of a fear of the unknown. That may sound a little weird to some people, but as a kid at the boardwalk, let's say, I didn't want to get in past my waist because I didn't know what was out there. So I thought a solution to that problem was, well, why don't I learn what's out there instead of being afraid of the unknown? I think a lot of society is afraid of the unknown, and you need to be able to tackle those challenges by learning. And the more I got into it, the more I was just fascinated by marine research. And then to understand through that education on how critical and important the oceans are to everyone, even in the middle of the country in Kansas, in terms of it produces most of the oxygen that we breathe, it drives the weather, and it certainly is connected to our food source and really our health and kind of the vibrancy of not just human health, but the U.S. economy as well. So I think it's really, really important for us to understand more and more, especially in the wake of climate change and things going on like that right now, of how we are not only affecting the oceans, but how the oceans are affecting us.
And that's so true, because it affects everything we do, and it's everywhere. And the latest thing that really fascinates me is what they're doing in the extreme environments, looking at metabolisms of organisms there for to develop prescription drugs.
Yeah,
it's amazing that they can look at those environments and those animals. Do you know? Have you read about that?
I have. I certainly isn't my area of expertise, but definitely know enough to know that they're going to geysers for thermophilic, they call them, that's heat-loving bacteria in hydrothermal vents in the ocean, and areas that are way under ice in Siberia. I mean, they're finding some very, very remote and very, exposed organisms in extreme environments. They're called extremophiles, I think.
Oh.
And so that kind of connects to also extraterrestrial life. Maybe one day those principles that we're discovering here might connect to finding life in the strangest and most extreme of environments in space.
Yeah. Oh, good point. I love that. The ocean is the space of Earth.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, and very, very. We have not explored. If you could guess, what fraction of the ocean have we explored?
Oh, it's less than 1%.
Less than 1%?
Yeah, in fact, the oceans, basically, when you look at volume of the oceans, contain about 98 to 99% of all living space on Earth.
And that's an incredible statistic. What do you mean by living space on Earth?
So obviously the Earth is about 2/3 water or so. So you think, it's 2/3, it should be around 67%. Well, oceans are three-dimensional, and as we know through all our research, and I think it's fairly common knowledge, that there are plankton in basically 100% of that water column. So there's life throughout the entire square inch, or almost every square inch of the entire oceans, right? But on land, aside from birds that temporarily fly, nothing lives in the air except maybe for bacteria and a few things like that. So when you really look at the inhabitable space of Earth, there's so much more space that's available in the oceans, and that's why there's so much more productivity and life in the oceans than on land, because we're all landlocked. Even birds are landlocked pretty much. They're going to be going back to their nests and living on the ground. While in the ocean, hey man, you're floating.
Okay, and like you said, it's three-dimensional. I mean, there's a lot of depth involved in that too, and all that space is full of life, living space. I'd never heard that before, and I found it just, really, really, really blew me away.
Yeah, it's
and now that you've explained it, it makes all the sense in the world. Biomass.
Yeah, we are a water world, really.
Okay, and that's why it's important. And if you could change anything about the sanctuary, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do?
That's a great question. There's a lot of things that I would think about globally, but one where I'm just thinking about the sanctuary, the one thing I wish I could change is probably pollution. I think human impacts to the sanctuary are pretty strong, and I'm not trying to paint a picture of doom and gloom at all.
No.
The sanctuary is still in relatively good shape.
Yes.
But there is a lot of pollution going into the oceans. Microplastics, like we just talked about, a lot of agricultural runoff, a lot of sewer spills like the one we had last year.
Yes.
A lot of things like that do affect human health. They close beaches. They elevate bacteria content. They affect the food chain.
Yeah, right. A lot of things.
They cause harmful algal blooms, which can go up the chain to marine mammals and sea otter die-offs. That kind of stuff. I just wish humans had less of an impact on the sanctuary itself. But overall, we're still doing pretty well.
Chad, and I'm sorry for springing this on you, but I was surprised, and I didn't know that you do some things over at the aquarium, Monterey Bay Aquarium. Tell us a little bit about the show that you're going to be going to.
Yeah, so it's funny. A lot of people say, "Oh, you work for the Monterey Bay Aquarium." Well, I know Monterey Bay Aquarium, Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. They kind of start with the same name. They are different, but we really do work closely together. However, I am a volunteer diver at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and so every couple of weeks, I'm part of this team that goes in, don the full face mask, and have a live interactive show with the kids and the crowd in front of the kelp forest tank. So I go down with a bucket of fish and feed all the other fishes in there and do about a 15-minute show just talking with a guide about all sorts of stuff about marine. I love it. It's fantastic.
And you're educating. You're educating the people who are there. What a great gig,
yeah,
man.
Talk about the fish, and it's a good opportunity to talk about the sanctuary too.
And you're right there in the environment. That's wonderful. And do you visit the Santa Cruz much? The Exploration Center? You ever get up there?
Yeah, Exploration Center, which opened, I guess, in 2012 now? Gosh, it's been open 6 years. That's amazing. No, I actually, a lot of the work that we've done, because I do a lot of underwater photography and video work over the years, and then a lot of the development of the original exhibits there, I had a big hand in. And so a lot of my photos and my colleagues' photos are still up there today. So it's fantastic. In fact, even me and my daughter, who turns 13 today, by the way.
Happy birthday.
As a 4-year-old, we're photographed on a mural behind the tide pool still.
Man, there you are. That's wonderful.
It's a really cool thing. So
really?
I'd encourage people to visit the Exploration Center in Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're down south, you can go down to there's one in Cambria, also. And I was talking to somebody else in Southern California last night who was talking to me about the Channel Islands Sanctuary, which is further down the coast. And we're really blessed around here because it starts down Channel Islands, goes all the way up to what, Olympic and
we have
Coast?
5 West Coast sanctuaries, Olympic in Washington, and we have 4 in California, 3 of them being contiguous with Greater Fairlands, Cordell Bank, Monterey, and then, like you said, skipping south to Channel Islands.
Chad, have you done any diving up in the Farallones or Cordell Bank area?
I have done some off the Sonoma coast, kind of Point Arena and south, and so a few years ago, and my colleague has been doing more lately. We just expanded Greater Fairlands National Marine Sanctuary. And so we're looking, of course, there's a big problem up there with the kelp die-off and the urchins exploding. And so part of that work was related to that.
Okay. Yeah. And to explain that, the purple urchins...
Yeah, the purple urchins are the main culprit. Yeah.
Okay, and they're eating the kelp.
It's a complex kind of story, but in a kind of a nutshell, we had some warming of the oceans from El Nino. We also had this thing called the blob, which was a large warm patch unrelated to El Nino. And kelp needs to have temperate temperatures, basically mild temperatures, and fairly cold actually. It got a little too warm. A lot of that kelp died off, and then you exacerbate that with an explosion, a high recruitment of urchins. So it was just kind of like the stars aligned in a poor way for kelp. So then whatever kelp was left was just decimated by the urchins, which eat kelp and other algae. And so now, because those populations are so large, it's kind of preventing new recruitment of new kelp. So I'm sure this cycle will end at some point, but right now they're having problems up there.
Yeah, bring in the otters.
Yeah,
don't they love urchins?
I know. If we could just train otters and make them go do that. Now, and we're having some similar patchy problems down here. It's not as bad as the North Coast, but there are some areas I used to dive of just complete kelp forests, which are just what we call urchin barrens now. Quite remarkable. Yeah.
Chad, thank you so much for showing up. And you will come back to the program, please, because there's so many things we need to talk about, okay?
Yeah, well, hopefully we discover a lot of cool stuff in October.
I'm sure we will.
I appreciate being here. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Chad. And we will be right back.